That's good. We're going to get started, everybody. Please stand for the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For all, please, Amy.
Okay. Mr. Anise?
Present.
Mr. Arcuri? Mr. Bova?
Here.
Mr. Brodsky?
Here.
Mr. Coyne?
Here.
Mr. D'Elia?
Here.
Mr. Ford?
Here.
Mr. Haskell?
Here.
Mr. Karam?
Here.
Mr. Mutolo? And Ms. Sesney? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You have the draft February 6, 2023 minutes in your packet. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second. Thanks, Bruce. Any comments, concerns, questions, deletions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Pat, the presentation.
Yep. So, Stephanie, welcome. We'll get to you in 1 second. Quick overview for those who may not have been here at the time, particularly Mr. Haskell. In 2020, when we went out on the bond market, we included about $2.5 million as part of that bond issue to rebuild our SCADA system. SCADA being an acronym for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. It's essentially remote monitoring and remote control of everything that's out in the field in a distribution system, and it's a treatment plant. You may recall that the original SCADA system was built in-house. A gentleman named Steve Donovan, who did a fine job with it over probably 8 or 9 or 10 years. The system was aging out. We knew that. Although Steve had done a great job, we also found, however, when we did our cybersecurity assessment with IBM, that they were able to penetrate it. It wasn't as encrypted as Steve had been led to believe. We also knew we were vulnerable because we had only one person that knew anything about it and was operating it. And if he had left, we would have been in a real fix. So when we decided to rebuild the system, we decided to contract out with Brock Solutions. And thank you for standing for our Pledge of Allegiance, even though you're in Toronto. Well, we were going to do the Canadian one too, but we couldn't remember the words. Sorry, Stephanie.
I'm glad you guys weren't looking at my lips because I didn't know it perfectly.
Oh, that's quite all right. We understand. So we brought on Brock Solutions to help work with our engineering staff in designing the layout of the system. Jim Mack with our IT department and Joe Roy spent a very large amount of time working very carefully with the folks from Brock. And we are now at probably, 98, 99% complete, maybe 100. I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
Close.
The contract ended December of last year.
Right. But we have, there's a couple of little follow-ups we're still working on.
Yes, I mean, we do the quarterly health check.
In maintenance mode. Yes. Okay, so we're 100% done. Since we are done, we thought we would invite Stephanie Mickle-Brancis, who was one of the key principals at Brock, to just kind of give her viewpoint on how the project went and just kind of share with our board her impression of the project and how our staff did, how well Brock did, and what we're doing moving forward. And I'm going to get out of the way so you can all see her instead of me. Take it away, Stephanie.
Okay. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So thanks again, Pat. My name is Steph, and just a little bit of background on me. I work for a company called Brock Solutions. So we're a professional engineering services company with about 750 professional engineers that work in this space. I'm physically out of our Kitchener, Ontario office, which is our Canadian headquarters, but our U.S. headquarters are in Dallas, and we have offices and people located all across North America. I had the pleasure to be involved in this project right from the beginning when we learned about some of the challenges that Pat just described. We kind of got a chance to sit with him and other folks that I see that are in the room and some other folks that basically explained to us the vulnerability that they had learned about their SCADA, which is that picture it like a digital monitoring solution of all your water systems, whether they're pumping stations, the water treatment plants, that sort of thing. There was some vulnerabilities there in the existing solution, which is is actually very typical of technology that's out there in the space. Some of it was at nearing end of life, and we saw what Pat described, the typical, there was some attrition, folks that had knowledge that was potentially walking out the door. And it was time to do this modernization upgrade for all those reasons and probably a couple more. So we explained how we tackle this type of challenge for other customers, not just in water and wastewater, but we do work across all sorts of different industries that are mission critical. And I think when we explained how we would tackle this project and how the technology that we were exploring to upgrade it, there was a lot of kind of synergies and collaboration with your team and ours. And we just kind of got to cracking on working on this project. We had a methodology that I think we brought to the table that was helpful in this environment. Because the systems are so mission critical, you can't really afford downtime. So a big part of our approach was simulating the automation and the software that we were going to be upgrading so that before we ever showed up on site, we knew that it was going to work and that the cutover plan that we were planning to implement was going to be successful. And the Mohawk Valley team, which included stakeholders that are in the room, but also folks from maintenance, from IT, from the water treatment plant, from your operator side, which weren't even Mohawk Valley folks, but contracted folks, did an excellent job figuring out how we were going to make sure that we were going to bring these systems online without any downtime, which I think was a hallmark of the success of this project. And I probably should say, from a Brock perspective, we think this was an excellent project. We met the milestones, and I think a lot of it had to do with that collaborative spirit. Like the folks on the Mohawk Valley team really knew what their systems needed to do, and were able to translate that to our team. So independent of the technology, they knew what needed to be accomplished to host these water systems. They knew the kind of vulnerabilities from a cyber perspective and an IT perspective that we had to mitigate. And then with our expertise and some of the best practices that we brought, we're able to do this, I think, on time and on budget, which through COVID, I don't think we can say that for a lot of other projects where there were a lot of delays and supply chain issues that I can tell you for other industries really hampered us. For this particular project, we didn't really see any of that, and we're able to deliver. I think I was waiting to hear what you said there, Joe, but I think everything's been invoiced, paid, and the final milestones have been met, and it's on to kind of more of a maintenance, and if there are any issues, to be able to talk to the team and make sure we get those mitigated. At the end of the day, and I'll pause for questions, I apologize for rambling, but I knew I only had a couple minutes, so I'm trying to jam it all in here. But at the end of the day, I think what Mohawk Valley has now is a modern solution, and it's built on technology. For those that might find this interesting, at the automation layer, it's using modern Schneider Electric PLCs and automation. At the higher level monitoring or SCADA layer, it's using a tool called Ignition. Both of these are best of breed in terms of what we see in the industry. We're vendor neutral, so we're not beholden to any particular technology. We're independent, so we feel we can kind of bring some ideas and some technology to the table that we know fits what our customers want in terms of how they want to support it, cost, maintenance, maintainability, et cetera. So this solution is very modern. It gives folks from Mohawk Valley the ability to look across their water systems on their phones. They can see it mobile in real time, and be able to see what's happening in the systems, which was a capability they didn't have before, kind of in a hardened, robust way, to Pat's earlier point, that's not vulnerable to the kind of attacks that it was before in terms of cyber vulnerabilities. So from our perspective, and I could speak on behalf of Brock, part of the leadership team. We've just been smitten with the Mohawk Valley team and thought this was an excellent project. The people that worked on it just thought that the spirit of collaboration and teamwork was excellent. And, you know, we look forward to helping Mohawk in whatever kind of digital transformations they might have in the future, and think that we're proud of the solution that we've collectively built and set up for you folks. So maybe I'll pause there. I don't know if I jammed it all in a couple of minutes, but that's the story of your SCADA evolution and where Brock Solutions fits in.
Thanks, Steph. Does anybody have any questions? Anything specific that you want to know about while she's here?
Anything you want to add, Jim?
No, I think it was a lot of cooperation. Like I said, we had Steve Donovan, who built the system, got right in with Brock from day one.
Yep.
A lot of assistance. Joe Roy from our side and project manager did an incredible job. So I think between them and Gary and his people at the plant, we all got together and we got this solved and got the solution out and running.
Two more quick comments. Initially, the company that's running our treatment plant, which was formerly called Suez, now is called Veolia because they got purchased. They were going to implement our own SCADA solution for the plant, and then we decided that we wanted to have it consistent with what we were doing in the distribution system, so that at some point down the road of any future board decided we wanted to take the plant back, it would all still be one system, and it would make a lot more sense. The other thing that's very different now is that when Steve Donovan built the original system, SCADA was considered an engineering function totally. When IBM did their assessment for us, they said that really, if you're monitoring a pump, a valve to show you elevation and water level in a tank or anything like that, that device is hardware and engineering related. But as soon as that signal leaves through that PLC and heads up into this system, it's really a communication network, and it's really an IT function. So we're, you know, that change in philosophy really means that SCADA is predominantly now a function of our IT department. Joe knows it very well. Other people in that department are familiar with it. And since they're in Toronto, one of the things that we've discussed a little bit is sending our newest engineer, who I'll introduce in a minute, up to Toronto to sit with them, not only to learn the SCADA system, but it's a great overview of the whole distribution system, what all the parts are out there, how they function, and how they all interrelate. So we're looking forward to doing that. Jim?
I didn't mean to forget Phil and his team because they were big contributors also for us.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yep. Good job by all. Good team effort.
It doesn't take a lot of reading over these last 5 or 6 years or more to know what's the vulnerability of water systems, of utility systems, of oil companies, of all the public infrastructure that has found itself under attack by bad actors throughout the world. You sometimes wonder why Russia or Eastern Europe criminals have so much interest in hurting things that happen in this country and that affect our people. But somebody reminded me a long time ago is why do pickpockets in foreign countries focus on Americans? And that's because they have the money. And we have been in a position as a nation to be very vulnerable and continue to be very vulnerable. This board of directors, all volunteers, as Ellis and I were talking about earlier, people who look to their community and say, how can I help, have made a massive investment in technology here at the Mohawk Valley Water Authority. More of an investment than most public authorities, percentage-wise, in this state. I have no doubt. You are doing everything you can to protect the system. This was another example of it. Millions of dollars, but to be breached, to have somebody interfere with the delivery of potent water, to affect our industry, to hurt our people, is a much more important role than any other utility authority has. And you have taken it very seriously. You should be very proud. This board has made decisions that are very difficult to make, and at times we'll get a lot of people saying to you, why are you spending all my money that way? And they just don't understand it because all they see is the kitchen faucet. And sometimes they think about it when the toilet doesn't work.
but you've taken this responsibility very seriously. I have always been the big focus on technology. As you know, that's my background, and I can't be more proud of my affiliation with this board as a result of it. This is just another example. I want to say thank you personally, but I think this community owes you all thanks that they will never know how good you've done. And particularly the staff, but I'm looking at the board as making the decision and the investments necessary for the staff to do what was necessary.
Well, we couldn't do what we have to without board support, so it's a team. Thank you.
Well said, Bruce. Anything else on this?
Bruce, you're completely correct. And not just the board, but Pat and Jim, they had the vision to know that it had to be done. This was such a big jump. I mean, we have to protect against the low-cost, high-yield attack. We weren't there before. We're there now and beyond that. It was a huge jump, a huge jump.
Great.
Good work.
We ready to move on?
Unless there's any other questions or comments? Yep.
Is it something that, that people would like to look at sometime?
Yeah, we should look at the new one.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it, in operation when we toured the water facility, up north, but I only briefly saw it as a side, not as a...
I'm sure we could set up for anyone that wants, so we could do screenshots right from here and kind of show you how the system operates and how it looks. So we could do that, as long as we don't film it and put it on TV. Pardon?
Executive session.
It's also in full operation. I think the treatment plant.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to take you on a kind of a virtual tour of the system and show you what all the screens look like and what they do. I think you'd find it interesting for those that want to come in. We can either schedule that for a separate time or even just do a quick 5 or 10 minute overview at another meeting in the future. But again, we just wouldn't want to broadcast that on
Right.
video.
Good, great. Next item on our agenda, reaffirmation of HR policy regarding sexual harassment, which is in the miscellaneous section of our packet.
With that. Again, for those of you that may not have heard this before, we have, under the New York State Public Authorities Reform Act, we are required each year to bring a variety of policies back to the board to be either reaffirmed or updated and changed as necessary. This is one that required some updating and changing as necessary. Our new personnel director, Sandra Dare, is here tonight. Sandra spent some time working on this over the last few weeks, updating it from the last version. As she did that, she told me that she was expecting the state to issue new guidance, which actually just came out on Thursday of last week. So today she scrambled to take the policy that was sent to you last week with her latest updates and then update it even further with some extra language. So I'd like to just ask Sandra to maybe walk you real quickly through the changes so you know what you're voting on.
Sure. So the policy that you guys received a few weeks ago was the most updated version. It matched up with the current model policy that expired this past Thursday. On Thursday, they issued new changes. Basically, they focused a lot on adding some transgender language, bystander intervention. They added remote workplace to the discrimination policies. And they also added a hotline for sexual harassment that New York State has that's 24/7. So those were some of the major changes from the version you guys originally received. And again, this is in line with the New York State model policy. We didn't write any of this language. I didn't write any of this language. Basically, it was kind of just a plug in of our organization into what New York State considers to be meeting all their new guidelines.
I don't think it's long enough.
Any questions?
I do have a question.
Sure.
What training do we do for employees?
It's a mandatory training on an annual basis. So it has to be done once every calendar year. That was enacted in 2018.
How is that training occurring?
So this year we're actually going to be using a platform called Zywave. It's a learning management system. That's something that we have access to. Basically, everybody just needs an email address, They log in using that email address, and then, you know, it's an interactive training, because that is one of the requirements of New York State, that it does have to be interactive. So there's questions, and you get points, and you have to get a certain score in order to pass, and then you get a certificate at the end that we put in the personnel file.
And that, about how long is that?
About an hour.
Because I have to do that at Utica College, the faculty, I don't know if it's the same one. That's what I was gonna ask.
It probably is very, very similar, because everybody has the same criteria in New York State. However, each organization does have to do it. So if we had somebody, you know, that just did it yesterday, that we hired today at their old organization, they'd still have to do it here, because you do have to do it for, you know, for each organization.
And we are monitoring, making sure everybody goes through.
Yes, everybody is going to be completing it. Even the board is going to be completing it this year. So
What
Heads
happens
up.
if we fail?
you won't. You can take it unlimited times.
So the bottom line is that this language is mandatory.
Have you thought about doing similar training on equity?
At this time, we're actually we're kind of trying to do some of the mandatory trainings. I know that we weren't necessarily, you know, doing the ones that we had to do. So we're gonna evaluate, do the things that are required, and then we're gonna evaluate, you know, other potential trainings that we might find useful and good for the organization as a whole in general.
I'd like to refer someone over to you locally who does this sort of training
Okay.
that maybe we might find helpful.
So we have access, like I said, with the learning management system. They don't have just sexual harassment training. There's actually hundreds of trainings available. But again, I mean, it comes down to time constraints. People are taking this on water authority time. So, you know, we just have to evaluate which trainings would be of most benefit to our employees, and then go from there and schedule it going forward.
It's, the reason I bring that up is because under the federal grants, it's becoming more important, and they're gonna be looking to see that employees have equity training, and it's, I read a lot of federal grants, and it's becoming a major part of their requirement. So I think we need to look at what resources might be available.
Right. Yeah, we do have the trainings available. Again, I think it just really comes down to looking at what we have and deciding, you know, what's gonna work best for us and what's gonna benefit us most and what's the most efficient use of, you know, training time, which that may be it.
Depends how much federal money we want.
Any other questions? We need a motion to approve the policy along with the changes for it. Second, thank you. Any further discussion, questions, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Committee reports. Jim?
Yes, in your packet, you have January and February's monthly financial reports. We'll have March to you very shortly for the next meeting. We just got done with our audit, our financial audit for the year. Things went very well. We had a couple new rules we had to adopt, so that took a little longer than anticipated. But we were able to file on time. We filed with the state, so and we have to do some continuing disclosure as part of our bonding. That's coming up in June. We have to file by, but it's all part of our monthly financial reporting and what we do on an annual basis. So as of the end of February, consumption, we are down 2.8% for the year compared to last year. So hopefully we can recover. We should be able to recover. Sales is actually up 153,000 for the year compared to last year, a little below our budget right now. And cash flow, we're positive for the year. I know in March we took a little dip. We're spending a lot of money on supplies and things like that, so we take a little dip for the year, and then we start building up for the middle quarter and ending quarter of the year. So everything looks relatively good for the year, so hopefully we'll continue on that path. Any questions?
We need a motion to approve both months, please. Thank you, Rich. Anything, a second, please? Any further comments, questions, concerns? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you. Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most of you met our new engineer, Dan Falzinski, on the way in the door. Dan has been with us now a little over 3 weeks and is replacing Eric Schuler, who replaced Dick Goodney. So he is our new department head. Worked out real well that Dan was available and was eager to come on board. He has more than 25 years' experience consulting in the private world, but some of that consulting actually included work on the Ilion Pipeline project that is being funded by and kind of overseen by the Herkimer County IDA. So Dan was under contract with them to do a lot of quality control work on that. Also, he's been involved in some of their build out at the Schuyler Business Park, has worked with some of our engineering staff, knew a few of them coming in the door. So real nice fit, good synergy here. And we're happy he's on board. Unfortunately, the day that Dan started a few Mondays ago, I received a resignation from Ben Smith, who was one of our engineers that the folks on the Capital Committee at least knew from the committee meetings. Dan started 8 o'clock in the morning and Ben resigned about 2 o'clock. So we picked one up, let one go. So we have 2 engineering vacancies that we're going to be working to fill. Both Dan and Sandra and I will be getting together and figuring out what we want. Dan's still kind of learning the department a little bit. I didn't want to hire anybody until he had a chance to get a little bit of a deeper understanding of how everything works and what his team is made up of and functioning, so that we can really kind of hone in on what skills we're looking for and how we want to round out the engineering staff. So we'll be moving to do that over the next few weeks, I'm sure. But in the meantime, welcome, Dan, again. Things are going well. Yep. So you'll get to see him quite a bit over the next couple of years, I'm sure. So at any rate, wanted to mention that this just came out today, press release from the governor's office, $425 million of water infrastructure money they're going to be making available in a combination of grants and reduced financing opportunities and things of that nature. So along that line, I've already had some conversation with some of our local representatives in the Assembly and the Senate. And one of the things that on the hit list for Dan and I to work on is to develop a funding letter that we're going to be sending to all of our local representatives in the Assembly and also on the Senate side to see if they are able to come together and work out some kind of line item, member items for us. And it'll be a scalable list of projects. So depending on how much funding could be available, we'll offer some options for them to take a look at. And hopefully between member item money and grants like this that are becoming available, we'll be able to get some interest in the state level and acquire some additional funding. Grants, hopefully better than low interest loans, but we'll see how that goes. Excuse me. So that letter will be going out probably before the end of the week. In the meantime, for those of you that might look at Hinckley Reservoir every now and then, as of Friday, it started spilling over the top of the dam finally. We had some concerns going back about a month ago because it was getting quite low. It was under 1,200 foot elevation mark, and 1195 is where they're supposed to halt it and stop it from falling, and it was dropping quickly. When I reached out to the Canal Corp, our buddy Howard Goebel, who some of you know.
Best friend.
Yeah. Well, it turns out Howard's not there anymore. I know you're upset. I'm sorry. I will say, in Howard's credit, over the last 2 or 3 years since we had the settlement, he had been reaching out to me quite a bit to let me know what's going on, and voluntarily put the brakes on the releases and stuff a couple times over the last few years. But it wasn't happening this year, and when I reached out to him, it took me a little while to find out he wasn't there. And I now have 2 other contacts at the Canal Corp. And when I pointed out to them that there is an out-of-court settlement agreement, there's a minimum level they have to abide by, they did a cutback that night. They did another one a couple days later, and they didn't cut it back as much as I was requesting, but they did slow it down, and it began to stabilize and start climbing back up. With the snow melt and the rain we've had, it is now full. The only concern I have is it's a tiny bit earlier in the year, at least in my opinion. The goal is to have it spilling by May 1. which is when they have the canal full and they're ready to open up navigation. So if they can fill the canal, still have a full reservoir to start with at the beginning of the season, that's the ideal condition. So the concern I have now, since the canal is not full, and I just drove back from Long Island on Saturday, and I could see the Mohawk River, still quite low. I don't know by the time they fill it what kind of reservoir level we're going to be looking at, but I do have contacts there, and we've spoken on the phone and agreed that once their new chief hydrologist who replaced Howard is also leaving or maybe gone by now. So once they stabilize their own internal staff, the plan is that Dan and I and probably Phil will sit down and meet with the new folks at the Canal Corp and walk them through the history of all the documents that are in place and make sure that we start out with a good understanding with these folks since they're all going to be new. So at any rate, we made it through a pretty low point in time. If it had been January, I would have been really nervous. But considering we were heading into mid-March already, it worked out just fine. So knock on wood, we're okay with that. Last thing I'll mention, unless there's any other questions after that, is that Mr. Mack pointed out to me today that since we resumed doing the postings and shutoffs a year ago from January, it's now been about 15 months. We've brought in now over $3.1 million in collections through those efforts. So I know Jim Corfana appreciates that as well as we all do. So we're still collecting quite a bit. We did some more postings and sent out some notices, even today, some bigger ones. We'll spare them until they pay it or they don't pay it, and then we won't spare them on camera. So at any rate, that's all I have for now. Unless anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to take those. If not, Mr. Chairman?
Great, thank you. Any old business? Under the new business, Pat?
Yep. So Amy and I were talking about how we would lay the menu item out here on the agenda and decided that we would just put these on a new business. We never do that. So
Another agenda.
yeah, so we did. So
It'll be brief.
it'll be very brief. It will. So I mentioned earlier that there are policies that have to come to the board periodically, at least once a year, to be reaffirmed. We've done a bunch already for IT. We've done some for accounting and HR. Most of those have been unchanged. It's the same thing we've had, no questions asked. The procurement policy is one that Jim and I are talking about a little bit because it lays out dollar thresholds for where you can have to get informal telephone quotes versus written quotes versus formal bidding. We haven't changed those dollar thresholds since I think around 2008. Does that sound right, Jim?
I don't think we ever changed them.
Or maybe we haven't changed them at all since the policy was first adopted. But with inflation, obviously, it's harder to find stuff at those dollar limits without having to get into a much more involved process and spend more time with staff. So the only reason why I brought it up here for discussion was I didn't know, Mr. Chairman, if you want to have us sit down with a board committee and just kind of iron out what we think might be reasonable levels for procurement dollar-wise, or whether you just want us to do something and bring it back to the board for full board discussion at the next meeting. We're happy to do that too.
I think if you guys have an idea of what it is you're looking for, just bring it back to us. And we'll discuss it next month.
So we'll figure out what those numbers are. Very good. Next item. So New York State decided to throw us a little whammy. The health department. Phil will be talking in just a minute, but I'll give you a quick background. You are probably all familiar with what's called the lead and copper rule. Mm-hmm. We have to do lead sampling. We had been doing lead sampling on every 3 years, 50 samples from houses every 3 years, and we were fine. This all began back when the treatment plant came on board, and the state health department wanted to know what our treatment protocol was going to be to buffer and neutralize the water so it wouldn't be leaching lead from lead service pipes into the water. And they presumably deemed that we had what we had considered to be optimal corrosion control, a reviewed process that kept the lead levels to the minimum level. Somewhere along the way, the state decided that they either can't find, never issued letters certifying that we had achieved that proper process chemically. So they decided that us and Erie County Water, Monroe County Water, a bunch of large systems across the state There's no record that we were ever deemed to be in compliance with the best treatment process. And so now they want us to go back to what they consider normal sampling, which is going to be 100 households every 6 months. We're going from 3 years at 50 houses to 100 houses every 6 months. Phil and his folks have had a hard time even finding the 50 every 3 years to get people to cooperate. And so I'm sure he'll be happy to tell you how difficult that task is. And now that we're trying to find 100 people to do it every 6 months, we think that, maybe we might have to devise some kind of an incentive
I
program.
was just gonna say, can't we do an incentive?
Well, that's what we want to talk about. So, Phil, I stole all your thunder. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I'll just to clarify. So part of the issue is the designation of the optimum, what they call water quality parameters, right? So we know that pH and alkalinity are our designation. The state never issued a letter that said that those were the two parameters that had to be monitored, along with calcium. So they put 50% of the large systems in New York State, in upstate New York, back on standard monitoring. This, I think, is a result of an EPA interaction with the Department of Health. So we were going to have to return to standard monitoring back in 2025. This really accelerates that schedule to now. And in talking with some of the other larger systems across the state, we thought maybe it might be good to try to incentivize participation. If you remember last year, we did the sequential sampling. It was just an internal study. We were looking for 15 participants in June and in August, and we could only get 6 to participate in August, again from June. So some of the thoughts from some of the other systems were perhaps like a $25 credit or gift card for those that are willing to participate. Because you're not supposed to change sites either between the 6-month periods, which means if somebody doesn't want to do it in the next 6 months, then you have to go out and justify that and submit that to the health department for approval. It's an enormous amount of work, tremendous strain on resources, staffing, analytical costs. So, we ask you to at least consider some sort of incentivized program.
Do it. It's a big deal.
Bruce is in agreement, so.
Bruce volunteered.
I don't think we're
Yeah, take my water, I don't care.
Phil, Mr. Coyne just asked a good question. Staffing-wise, the question was, do we anticipate needing any temporary personnel to do this work? I mean, we haven't discussed that. I'm assuming we don't, but.
So we are reallocating, at least initially, to try, but we're gonna have, my staff is gonna be on the phone reaching out to all identified lead services until we get 100 participants.
Isn't there a third-party firms we might be able to contract with to take care of that?
Could.
Get in contact with Sewer. With,
Carl Schwanz?
yeah. Get in
Oh,
contact-
sewer.
Sewer. And ask them for the name of the company in Pennsylvania who was their consumer contact company. They were doing surveying. And they third party, and they went out and contacted customers and took care of all of that. You might be able to, at least get a price.
Yeah. We'll give Carl
This way, they just do it and they report back.
Yeah, I mean, actually taking a sample and handling it properly.
Well,
and getting it
that's,
logged
they
in is a
would do
different
the
thing.
training.
Yeah.
They could
Oh.
do it, they could do that all for you. They are,
It's still customer related sampling, right? So we still have to get the bottles out to them. They take
right,
the
but what they
sample,
did
put them out,
as a
and
third party for other systems, I don't know if it was water, but I know for sewer, was go into the community, identify people who are gonna participate, teach them what they were supposed to teach, collected the information, developed reports, sent them back to the authority, and I think they're based in Pennsylvania.
we can look into that. I
Would you
think
feel
we're
you
still
need
gonna
that kind of help, or are you set up to deal with this?
I think we're gonna learn as we go.
The question is, how much should
We're
they
starting
do?
May
you know?
1st to solicit volunteers to participate in the program.
When do you have to start this?
July 1st.
Yeah. So, well, one thought too is that we would do a, pretty large media statement saying that this is what we're doing to protect the quality of the water.
Yeah.
We're looking for people to participate. We're willing to offer maybe $25 for each quarter that they participate, so maybe twice a year, something like that.
This upsets me, we always ask our employees, let's do this too.
Yeah.
I know you've been doing this and you're busy.
Right.
But let's do this too.
Right, we'll certainly look into that company. If there's a company that can do that, that's great. But
I just think there is.
Yeah.
I would just add, though, just for everybody's information, that we are not in violation of the lead and copper rule. There's been no change in the
Right.
status of our monitoring or our reporting requirements.
Good point.
This is simply the Department of Health shifting the focus a little prematurely, so.
So, what are you looking for? Right, do you want to come back and take a look at this within staffing, within this group? I would think that we could do better than $25. To me, it'd be like $50 credit. If we can,
Amazon
if we can
funds.
credit it somehow or other on billings, for the participants, and then we'll give you what you need, Phil.
Okay.
All right, so if we have something ready for the May meeting, then we can use the rest of May and June to be trying to line people up, and we'll know this company, if Bruce is talking about, if they're willing to get involved and can do it.
Well, let's try to have it ready for May, since you have to start in May. So
Well, yeah. Well, we gotta recruit in June and start sampling by July.
We may be running parallel tracks to do this, but
Yeah.
we're at least gonna have to start soliciting volunteers.
Yeah.
To get on.
Okay. So we just want, again, just a discussion item for now, but we'll come back in May. We'll hopefully have a little more solid proposal, and then go out either through a company or do something publicly through the media, try to recruit volunteers, flash a phone number, let them see the dollar signs, et cetera. Hopefully we'll get some responses. Last item, I think Amy actually is going to cover for us, right?
Yeah, last item is an evaluation of board performance. It's supposed to be done annually, and I don't believe it was done last year. It is anonymous. You don't have to put your names on it.
we didn't do this in that stack. We did whenever we did it.
I don't believe so.
All right. Well, I'm
But
sure you
but
can
I'm
write down what a
passing
great
out.
job we're all doing. Anything else, Pat? We're adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.